Hello and welcome back to LDC FM. You're tuning into our podcast featuring interviews with our community of independent designers and industry guests. We'll be discussing topics of sustainability, conscious design, the future of fashion, tech, and innovation. This podcast has been recorded alongside an Instagram Live, so apologies for any technical issues prior to tuning in. Thank you for listening.
Hi everyone, it's Rebecca here and I'm from Lone Design Club. I'm the CEO and founder. So we're very excited today. We've got Tamara from Fashion Roundtable, founder and CEO, who's going to be joining us, and we're going to speak a little bit about Fashion Revolution Week, how Fashion Roundtable was set up, the story behind the company, as well as talk a little bit about the new, very interesting hot topic at the moment of Fashion Week going digital, and how and if this is going to be a positive step for the fashion industry, and how we as consumers and designers can make the most of it. So I want to start off, Tamara, please tell us a little bit about yourself, your background before Fashion Roundtable.
Hi everyone. So I was someone that fell into the fashion industry essentially. I worked as a fashion editor and a stylist, mainly for magazines. And I worked freelance, worked for lots of different publications, ranging from ID and Dazed and Muse and Mix and Harper's Bazaar, Australian.
Wow.
I used to do portraits for American, and I worked for Italian Glamour, etc. So lots of different publications. And then I did commercial work to make a living.
Wow. Amazing. Gosh, you've done a lot.
Well, I'm old.
No, you're not. So how did that lead you into Fashion Roundtable?
I was always quite political. I never shop fur. I've been vegan for 26 years. I joined D&D when I was 13 or 14 after watching a film that came out in the 80s called Threads, which absolutely terrified me. In a way, politics was part of when I was a lot younger and was a part of my 20s. And then when you're in the fashion industry, I think you're so concerned about getting your next job or working that you're caught in it, and it's quite addictive. And when I had my son, I had a kind of enforced recalibration because I had to look after a child as well as look for work. So that was an interesting juggle, and I was really impacted by how difficult it was to maintain my presence in the market, and also digital was coming, so the magazines had less of it, and they had less profile, and it was not so straightforward for them. So I was, I guess, more outraged by the injustices, because I'm from a working class background. I've got a Turkish father, so I've experienced racism, and I've experienced them along the way, and I've experienced the class system. But what I hadn't really encountered was the fact that a mother in a freelance career was going to be quite so problematic. And I have to say I had it quite easy compared to other people, because I had agents all around the world and I was very focused to juggle everything. And the cost implications of childcare were just ridiculous. And the impact of your career, and therefore your sense of self. And living in London, we were on the 8th floor, we didn't have a this then. It was really just a whole recalibration time. I had him later. I wasn't 22. I mean, my mum had very different having a child as a teenager. I was 41 when I had my son. So I just had a kind of time of thinking, and then I was in a mentoring scheme to get women into politics. So that's kind of what happened.
Yeah, that's amazing. And tell us a little bit about, so what does Fashion Roundtable stand for? What are you aiming to support?
So we're here to support the sector. We're here to engage with policy and with leaders and parliamentarians. We're the secretariat for the 2 all-party parliamentary groups, which were dormant, and we rebooted them. And that means that policy leaders and parliamentarians are engaged with the needs and the voices of the sector, which wasn't happening. So that has implications in terms of fashion's voice in lawmaking, in a kind of understanding and comprehension of the needs, and there are very various, those needs, because it's a wide sector. So it's a very interesting role, because it's one that we've carved out that wasn't there before, so it's new.
Yeah, absolutely. That's really interesting. And so then moving on a little bit to Fashion Revolution Week, this is an important time, not just for Fashion Roundtable, but for the fashion industry as a whole. Why is Fashion Revolution Week specifically important to you, though? What would you like to see come from this?
I mean, I knew Ursula before, from when she was working on Aesthetica. Jessie Brinton, who's a friend of mine who used to be the features editor of Sunday Times Style, wrote the Aesthetic with actually my old Margot behind it. And I wrote a piece at the time about Noki, about JJ, who's an old friend, and for that, and I thought it was beautiful. And I remember I was pregnant when we went to the launch, and I loved it. That I thought what they did was amazing. That was with the British Fashion Council, and then that stopped, and they set up Fashion Revolution, and I thought it was brilliant. And I had them. I went to events they did in Parliament, because obviously I was working there, and then with this Friday, they had Dr. Lisa Cameron, who's the chair of the APPG, which is the All-Party Parliamentary Group for Textiles and Fashion, and Anna Slowly Young, who's the co-chair of our other APPG, Ethics and Sustainability in Fashion, who's chairing. And I think that's brilliant. That's an endorsement of the work that we do. And it's a community. Funnily enough, one of them is now friends with my ex-boyfriend in the south of France, and is working as a worker on so we're definitely all quite connected. The work they do on policy, I'd say, is way more global. I think that have a great voice and a great presence. I see them as cousins.
Yeah. Okay, amazing. But that's incredible. It's great you've had that journey with them, and you've moved, through the past.
A lot of people in the sector, obviously, I've been in it for so long. I mean, Tamsin Blanchard organises the Fashion Open Studio and spoke on our webinar on Friday with some of her designers, someone I've known for years. She wrote The New Black and was like the leader in people in mainstream fashion industry thinking about sustainability. Like a decade. So I've known her for 20 odd years. I think that we've all known each other through different incarnations, and gradually the what was noise is now becoming deafening.
Yeah, 100%. That's really interesting, and I think that leads nicely into what I really want to talk about in this call. This new, or the British Fashion Council have just announced that Fashion Week is going digital, and we were talking earlier just before this call about how there are pros and cons to this. And I particularly enjoyed the article on Fashion Roundtable website that talks about this, and I loved the 4 words relevance rather than newness. I think this is extremely important and pivotal right now. And I'd like to talk a little bit about this, because in the article, and I've heard people say this before as well, and I've seen it a lot, buyers saying they want more, always more newness, constantly newness. But this idea that, will the global pandemic we're going through, this digital shift that the industry especially is forced to undertake, will this be a pivotal moment for the fashion industry awakening to sustainability and environmental issues to really start taking them seriously?
I mean, I think there's long been an issue with Bev Mallock wrote that article, and she's a brilliant writer and obviously a retail and buying expert who's been a part of the Fashion Roundtable family since before our inception. She actually came to see me in Parliament when I was still working there. And I think the issue I've had with the way British fashion being calibrated is that it's a focus on new. If I look at the Paris market or the Italian market, you can argue, it's a bit boring, it's a bit commercial. Well, actually, brands that last a really long time. Isabel Marant took years to get off the ground and become this big name. I remember she changed PR and she changed stylist. My friend was her stylist for many years. It was beautiful. And these things take time. You have to takes time to work out who you are, whether you're a creative or a brand, or identity, and to work out how to do thing. And I mean, we work with brands, and I think I've had enough business training. They don't seem to have the advice. All these things are vital if you're, especially now at the moment. And then they're retailers, and having to think of how to work in a really difficult moment. They've lost so many opportunities for market. So online, I think, is inevitably going to grow. It's inevitable because we've all just been at home for 6 weeks. Apart from, I mean, I had a really beautiful afternoon a couple of days ago where I was up the road, and we went to a baker, a greengrocer, and for my husband, because I'm vegan, went to the butcher. And that was like what I used to do as a child with my mother, where we'd go to the shops but that's a really housey and golden moment in Northumberland. The reality is a lot of people are shopping behind Boohoo's forecast. I think it's 57% in sales. So online has issues as well. I don't think some designers translate. I think there are lots of things that people think they want to do, but actually the way that we're feeling slowing down, it's really hard to concentrate. We've got all self isolating with mental health, looking after the kids. So there's lots of different aspects around trying to push things on brand. I mean, Carla Otto had their press day and then had to redo it because it wasn't working when they moved it. I didn't even understand how to do this. So it's very difficult for people to connect in the same way. Clothes are very visible. Some more couture labels I don't think work online. Black doesn't read well online, which is what we saw so many influencers move into colour when it became about digital and magazines moving onto online rather than print. It just wasn't reading the colour. You could see the depth, whether it was velvet, whether it was satin, what it was. I think that has an aspect. I really applaud the fact that they've gone non-binary. That's work we've been doing with the APPG for Textiles and Fashion, doing a representation with an academic lead, and we had a Zoom call with the chair team about that week. So that I think is fantastic. Several people such as Eden from school who, you know, they don't see their clothes designed by a gender category, and they don't see that, you know, their customer doesn't either. And I think that is something to be applauded, because that's definitely going to be a direction of travel. And ultimately a customer is a customer, right? So you want to engage with.
It's very much a time of reaction and agility and community right now, is, you know, which is quite interesting. And I've heard a lot of people talk about, you know, is this a time also of equalization where big and small brands have quite similar opportunities now? You know, we're all using the same social channels.
It does if you're on Amazon, right? It does if you've got access to where workers here are going in. It does if you've got the capability to move online very quickly. Then yes. If you haven't, say my son's birthday's in a couple of weeks, and there's a small brand that are out of the West Country that do smiley face ethical t-shirts, and I've bought him one, you know, and it came today. And
amazing.
What's his surname? Alex, the makeup artist, Alex Thomas. Anyway, name's gone, sorry. Her with their black and white hair. Her husband actually works with the designer. He's called Marcus. So there are opportunities for that, but there's not. But it's also whether or not you've got the resources, you know. And again, juggling, single mother, 3 kids, homeschooling, expectations, different areas, very difficult. So I think it can be equal, but equally it can be very unequal. It's, you know, I heard something very interesting on Newsnight by Emily Maitlis, where she said that this virus is not democratic, right? The bus drivers, and that's not democracy that they're getting it. It's not that 16 bus drivers have died of that. That's not democracy. It's people with more, who are in more removed jobs, are not dying of it, right? The guy from our local died of it. Okay, he died yesterday. it's not democratic, and so it's not equal. None of these questions ever up. Still dig into why more BAME hospital are dying of it than white workers, but I haven't got there yet with that. But I am looking into that
Interesting.
Just understand what's going on.
Yeah, no, that is very interesting. That's very interesting. And going a little bit more into digital, one of the other things, so obviously, you know, and you touched on this briefly, moving digital, everything moving digital. You know, this is a massive shift for the fashion industry, and I think you touched on a little bit there, especially for couture brands or brands based so much on that in-person physical experience of touching, feeling, and trying items. I mean, this is turning the entire industry on its head, and Fashion Week going digital as well, you know, and in the space of a couple of months. How do you see us? How are we going to deal with this as an industry, and who, you know, what avenues do you see brands taking to be able to tackle this?
I think they had no choice because we're all stuck at home. So they had no choice. I think that there were too many fashion weeks. It was overload. Yes. It became an influencer opportunity that spiraled out of control. It was a runaway train, and no one could stop it because if you're a model agent, and I saw a model agent I know joined earlier, you've got to push for your girls or your models to get bookings. So of course you're going to go along with it. No one could stop the train. It was a runaway train. But for designers, it kills creativity if you're being asked to make 6 collections. It's ridiculous. We all have our own style. This is not the 60s where there's one look that everyone's going to wear. Your t-shirt reminds me of a David Bowie kind of Ziggy. I'm wearing a dress from the 1940s. It's not like we have to buy that one outfit to be validated. So we're not shopping like that. But the market is assuming like that more than ever. So it was completely out of kilter. You know, even now I think I've got, you know, like I was talking to Anna from Elf Denim on our webinar, you know, I was saying, oh, I think the boot cut's coming back, and basically she was telling me I've kind of into the buy, you know, the kind of online presence of the early 90s going into the noughties. So even I'm for it. So, but I've got those jeans, you'll fit them. So, you know, like I'll just dig them out, and I think that's the same for lots of people. So I don't think, obviously not everyone's my age, but I just don't think that it's in tune with who we are, and also with our values and our economics. People are not going to come out of this virus richer. They're going to come out poorer. Not going to have the money to spend. I think that people will have a hit of shopping, which is why Boohoo's numbers are up. But they're Boohoo, right? That they're buying what's cheap. So
yeah,
I think that
says a lot, and that's quite interesting because another topic we you know we're hearing a lot about right now is the current situation actually shifting people's mindsets to consuming more consciously? You know, are we actually seeing people wanting to support local economies, wanting to consider their purchases more sustainable, ethical product? So, I mean, for me, that was why it was very interesting to see Boohoo's massive spike, because I really felt, and again, this is probably aligned with my demographic and my network, but I felt the opposite, that I've actually shifted to being more conscious, being more considerate, buying less, buying better, and considering what I buy. So reading that was a big shock that actually there's this whole other attitude going on.
But you see, when the Brexit vote happened, lots of people in the sector had assumed that that people would vote Remain, didn't campaign, didn't really get involved, and then were devastated and shocked by the outcome. And again, with this, the last two, general elections that we've had in the last 2 years, again, because the way algorithms work, which is the problem with online, is that it feeds us what we want to hear. It's not a library. It's it's private, and it becomes ever more diminishing. So the trick is always step out of your zone. I read the Daily Mail every single day, and I read the comments, and it's not always comfortable reading, but so that I can understand what people from a different perspective and a different political background and agenda to mine think. And I find that really important. I read the Facebook page of the council estate I grew up on, which is a very right-wing working class white area, and I do that so that I can understand what they have to say and why they think that. And whilst I agree with you, there will be people who want to shop more consciously and shop local, the price differential of the one aubergine that I bought in the greengrocer to the one in Sainsbury's is vast. So I have to really, I think it's the same with our shopping. It's how do we justify that price difference? And I think it's about explaining the story, explaining very transparent about what everybody's earning, so that people feel an identity. That's why the Who Made My Clothes campaign is so brilliant. I've given an identity and a value to the invisible, and they are women of colour in marginalised backgrounds in the third world, or in the equivalent of that in this country. So if they are not being paid properly, then how do you expect them to be able to shop the way that you might like to? So it's a vicious circle. And
I completely agree.
The issues that we've been focusing on about the garment workers and the shortage occupation visa list, you know, which I think is going to be highlighted again because of the NHS workers, and the fact that they don't earn the money that would allow them to be on this visa post Brexit, which is 25,600. As I say to people in policy when I speak to them, how much did your suit cost you? Well, if your suit costs much, how much do you think the worker that makes it earns? So how can you expect 6,000 a year? Because you've got to add in all the margins, and then they understand it, because their suit costs £100 at the most, and that's retail. Take it to cost, take it to manufacturer overheads, and you're left with not very many wages. So I think that to buy authentically is a hope, and I think that brands have to build that authentic voice, really tell their story, and that's where social media, I think, is of great support for them, and different platforms and mediums. But ultimately, you've got to understand that people are coming away with less, not more. They might have shopped in M&S and now they're in Lidl. So I think that they stretch on that. It's not straightforward.
No, I agree. I think it's really interesting. And on that kind of ties in, so it's a designer that we actually work with has commented and asked, please can you elaborate a little bit more on the word relevant? So going back to what we were talking about initially, relevance rather than newness, and how it's...
I need to speak to Bev. I need to ask Bev what Bev means by relevance, but what I would imagine she means is authenticity. And I think that London Fashion Week has been too prone to celebrate new over what actually connects and communicates with markets. I think that's how I would take it.
Yeah, absolutely. And on that note, do you have any advice, or what is your advice for small designers, especially right now, that are facing this current challenge?
I mean, I think it's been really difficult. We've been working with the Emergency Designer Network, who are volunteering and working on PPE, and that's been Bethany Williams, Phoebe Fish, and Holly Fulton, with the support from who've started that, but then other brands and other designers such as Tatum Jones, Patrick McDowell have worked with it, and they're doing that voluntarily out of the kindness really of their heart to support the NHS. And ultimately they know that their brands are at risk. Much press and however much celebration they've had, so how do you communicate in a difficult time to people? Personally, I feel blatant PR marketing doesn't connect at the moment. I think we're sensitive to this kind of free-for-all. I just had a big chat with someone who works in a corporate structure who's been furloughed. I can't quite understand why she's been furloughed, which means she's also worried about her future job. So she's not got money at the moment to spend. She's anxious. So I would say it's probably working on media platforms and your engagement, and then pushing new ways of looking. So I've actually been speaking to a couple of designers about adding something to my own website, which is my name, and it's got some of my styling archive, but also links to Fashion Roundtable, but just to support some brands that I've liked, British small brands, because most of them are, most of the fashion sector here is, which is what we're doing with the PPE work we've been doing. On a manufacturing level, it's the same, it's mirrored. We've got small manufacturers and we've got small designers. I think that we will be onshoring. I've been asking brands to look at whether they can bring their manufacturing back to the UK or to the UK, because I think long distance travel is going to be more problematic.
Yeah.
It's going to be the next couple of months. I think that flights will go up in price as well.
Yeah.
A very difficult time, and a lot of things are being pushed back to 2021, meaning that everybody's taking a hit. So everybody, us included, thought we were doing. I was supposed to be in Manchester this week for an event which would have been one of our first events, and that's obviously not happening. So you work with what you're doing. So we moved online with I realised, much as I might like to talk about, I don't know, my well-being or the fact that I do exercise every day, that's not what people want from Fashion Roundtable. What they want from Fashion Roundtable is experts. So they want to hear from the union, from policy leaders, they want to hear from employment right activists.
Amazing. So I'm conscious of time. We've been speaking quite a while, so I'm just gonna go with, sorry.
But you've got someone who's just joined called Ida from Istanbul. So my father's actually stuck in Turkey, went to get his teeth done at his dentist, which I agree is a long way to go. He's Turkish and he's ended up back in he's stuck basically in Turkey for the whole of this, but he's fine. He's on our land, so he walks to the river. But yeah, I just thought that you had somebody come, and also now my policy research is just here as well, Maria, who's Romanian. So everybody, and you sound like you're from Australia, am I right? Or are you from New Zealand?
New Zealand, very close, yeah.
I was speaking to his best friend who moved back to New Zealand. The mother's from New Zealand yesterday. We're all just coping, aren't we? And also kind of just feel grounded.
Yeah, exactly. It's definitely that time. But I do feel that, even, going through this and everyone all over the world, there's definitely a sense of support, and a sense of kind of we're all in this together, which is nice, something, positive, I guess, to come through this, which, we hadn't, something unprecedented we're all kind of going through.
We all say that we have to also keep our eye on the ball. So Coronavirus Act, which Maria, who's online now, who's our researcher, has been looking at with us and has put in our resources. It's something to keep your eye on. There are questions and challenges around why we're having changes to the law to support. And whilst I do want to do everything we all do, I think we're all ensure that our rights and sorry, my son's school just rang. I just had to turn that off. We have to keep an eye on what's going on with our rights and what we're losing as a consequence of these acts. And it's the same whichever country you're in. In Turkey, for instance, there was a lockdown, a really severe lockdown. They had a couple of hours now, so everyone was scrambling into the shops, and then it was complete lockdown. In France, you have to write a letter to go to 2 shops within a couple of kilometers, or you're fined. And I know a lot of people in France, and they're really anxious about why that's happening. I've been not clear whether that's police over enforcement or it's law. And here you've heard reports of people in their front garden being told off by the police, which is quite frankly ridiculous. So we've got to keep an eye on these laws. We've got to keep engaged with, even though most of them are working remotely. Look at the resources that Maria puts together for us, because that is fed into us by parliamentarians and by policy leaders across Whitehall. And whichever country you're in, just keep an eye on it, because whilst we all want to do what we can to keep off the streets and keep the NHS or whichever country's medical service you might live in, because I'm sure you're already global, supported and not overrun with casualties. We need to keep an eye on what's happening to our human rights and a positive. So in a way, it's a metaphor for what I say fashion. Yes, we want to be enlightened, soulful, sustainable consumer, but in all probability we might be in a boohoo warehouse undervalued situation. So
Yeah.
they're kind of, I think, those two metaphors really.
Yeah, absolutely. Very interesting. So conscious of time, and thank you so much. You've been, this has been a great conversation. I would like to just end with one question, and taking things on a positive, hopefully a positive end note. But from setting up Fashion Roundtable, from all the hard work that you've done, from everything that you've achieved, has there been a highlight or a moment that's been a real wonderful kind of point for you, something to reflect on that you'd like to, that you could share with us all?
So last year we did an event at V&A, and the V&A is like one of my happy places, and we brought together some designers from different backgrounds, and we brought them together, and Dr. Tristan Hunt, who's the director, who actually used to work on my floor in Parliament when he was an MP, opened it. Very nervous. We had the deputy speaker from the House of Commons, and I wore a stone. I felt like Anne Boleyn for a moment, who's my muse, who was Henry VIII's second wife. That felt amazing. Rebooting the APPGs and making sure that the sector had a voice has felt very important. Every day it's got different challenges, so it's got highs and lows within the day. And actually, because we are who we are and hardworking, all of the team, we've been able to very agilely to understand that we have to adapt and be a support, I think, in this time. I did try to do an event which in my head was going to work earlier this year, which was more kind of craft and mind, body, spirit, and I don't think us doing it but that might come down the line. I think also I think I feel very proud whenever we do an event and I see amazing people coming to speak and be a part of what we've done, and I'm really humbled. It's brilliant, and the audiences can be the best kind of people that I feel very lucky to have come to our events. So I mean, parliamentary events are always interesting. There'll be we had one when Trump turned up and there was a lockdown, and trying to get in and out, and getting into the building is difficult, but the best brains in the country want to go there, so you get access to the best and the most interesting people. And then with our own event, I think it's always brilliant to hear from the people that have got behind what we do, and the writers that for us. I always get a buzz out of the newspaper. And Jodie's brilliant at comms. Maria, who's joined us for the last couple of months, is fantastic. I went through 83 CVs to find her. She's a really hardworking. Aaron Binns, our fashion director, has years of experience and a great voice in the sector, and has worked all over the world. And I personally miss styling a little bit. I have to be honest with you, I did it, but also what I've got out of doing this, I think, outweighs that, because styling's changed so much, because the opportunity to work on a beautiful magazine and have carte blanche to do what I want is pretty much gone. So and we've always had to adapt, whoever we are. Back to your question about designers, I think that's what they need to do. They need to, and it's difficult if you're a bigger organisation, which is where flexibility and opportunity is for designers to understanding those margins of error.
Yeah, amazing, great. Well, thank you so much for joining us today. I hope everyone joined the conversation. I know, but no, we got there on the technical at the end. It's great. You've gone live now. I'm glad that I could take you on your first live journey.
You're here and you're here and I'm flipped.
I know, it's all very complicated, but we got there, which is great. No, it was great. Thank you so much.
Just one thing, if you've got questions on research, just email admin@fashionroundtable.co.uk and we can field that with Maria and other people in the team. And if you want to get in touch with Bev, again, email admin@fashionroundtable.co.uk and I can forward that on to her. But thank you very much for having me, and have a good afternoon, everyone.
Thank you, Tamara. Thank you, Tamara.
Bye.
Bye. Wonderful. So as Tamara said, please email. Please also feel free to DM. You can DM me with any questions or Tamara. And yes, please go online, explore more about what Fashion Roundtable are doing, and have a wonderful Fashion Revolution week. See you later.
Thank you so much again for tuning in. Head to our website, loandesignclub.com, and find more LDCFM podcasts, or discover more about our independent designers online.